Arcane Season 2 Act 3 officially dropped earlier this morning, and I saw it all before I even ate breakfast. Season 1 came out during a pretty dark time in my life. Honestly, it got me through so much. The expression and art was really amazing in contrast to the human storytelling between Vi and Jinx. But going into Season 2, it did feel a little bit different. I really enjoyed Vi's arc in becoming an enforcer. Kind of reminded me of Toph Beifong from Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you can't tell behind me, I'm a huge fan. I wasn't as interested in a majority of the other episodes until we got to Act 3 during episode 7. Another thing that I loved about Season 1 was interactions that are small in nature, but ultimately add up to bigger things. Just kind of seeing Vi and Jinx hanging out, it gave me a lot more empathy for the characters. And so seeing that again in episode 7 was just a real delight. And that's not to say they don't do it throughout the entirety of Season 2, whereas the rest of Season 2 unfortunately tends to skip over that with not just small jumps here and there, but actually leaps and bounds. There's a quote during episode 7 where Echo is saying,
"Can we just pretend like it's the first time?"
I adored that scene. I adored their relationship. Funny enough, I actually kind of figured them more as like a brother-sister relationship, and I wasn't very angry when I found out that they actually did have a romantic chemistry between the two, and I was even more shocked at how well it worked on screen. Seeing what could have been in this alternate reality during episode 7, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was some of my favorite parts about Season 2. However, a lot of the pacing issues really do take precedence. They take center stage. It just really feels like the show wants to get from point A to point B, not in a fun way. Okay, we got this game asset, check, or this skin, or this mechanic in the game. I could recognize it. It really detracted from the story. It's not to say that Season 1 didn't do that. It was more just like an Easter egg, something nice to have. And that's not to say that the story was bad in any way. I thought, yeah, I can see how these characters could get here. I just can't see how we got there so quickly. In fact, it happened so fast that I am blanking on a lot of scenes. Like, I remember some episodes where certain things happened and I'm like, hang on, wait, well, how did they get here again? That's not something that usually afflicts me watching a television show like Arcane, especially one where I'm heavily invested in the characters and the art. And between some of the acts, I personally wasn't aware that we had a couple of like month-long time skips or time jumps. When did Kate hook up with Maddie? Vi and Jinx kind of become more buddy-buddy. It was very confusing to say the least, and I understand how they got there. Again, it just felt very rushed, especially characters like Vander, bringing him back. Was he just a catalyst to reunite Jinx and Vi? And if it was, it didn't really quite feel all that earned. Jinx is kind of like Jace in that they both create hex tech, except Jinx is a little bit more crude and explosive. Jace is a little bit more refined. I love the contrast between the two sisters and the two brothers, but then in Season 2, you feel like you're being left on red, and you don't really understand until the end. And that's not necessarily a negative thing as long as you answer all of the questions, whereas I feel like it didn't really necessarily do that. It attempted to, such as, was Victor dead after Jinx's assault on the tower? Who was the future version of Victor that gave Jace the stones in the first hand? Yeah, I can come up with a couple of theories. I can make something in my head concrete. I will never actually know, despite waiting for this for the last 3 weeks and, the past like 2 years since Season 1 concluded. I would still highly recommend this to people. I would just kind of warn them that the pacing is a little wonky. I do wish that we had more time with these characters in this world, because these worlds are so fascinating to explore, and it just kind of feels like we're racing through them. A lot of Season 2 honestly does feel like an unfinished bridge. You're on one island trying to get to another one. I wanted to drive across the bridge and take in the scenery and absorb everything and enjoy the ride of Arcane Season 2, and I feel like there was a lot left on the table in terms of all of these new plots that they started, especially Mel's whole storyline. I still don't quite understand that. Season 2 of Arcane really reminded me of how I felt watching rewatching season 8 and season 7 of Game of Thrones. I do plan on rewatching season 2, but I just can't help but feel like this should have been, based on what we got in season 1, a little bit longer of a story, if not one more season. One of the standout moments for me was Isha's development with Jinx. Now, Isha's a character that doesn't have any speaking lines, so she kind of brings out a little bit of powder. And then watching Isha go out the way she did, that was some of the most saddest, like, it was so depressing. I thought to myself, Jinx is not gonna like this. And don't even get me started on the scenes of them running and jumping across the rooftops, remembering how Powder couldn't make that one jump without Vi and how they're both making the jump together. That's not to be taken lightly. This show is such, again, it's a visual masterpiece. Arcane is gonna be something that I'm never gonna forget, just because it was there for me during a time in my life where a lot went wrong, and let's be honest, season 2 also kind of managed to show up during a time of my life where I had to make a jump myself and leave something behind. I really am gonna miss this show. I honestly thought it would be going a lot longer than 2 seasons, and when I heard that this was the final season, I trusted the producers, and I still do. I agree that the characters should have ended up where they were, but again, I just feel like there needed to be at least another season just to kind of round out the characters. Maybe I am asking for too much, but again, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope one day that I can, make art like they make art. It is so inspiring, and again, I'm not gonna forget this show in a long, long time.